Natalie back in second. And now look who's opening up in the third place position. It's the number 2 of Jeremiah Jones. We may be seeing something here in Moto number 2 that we didn't get the opportunity to see in Moto number 1 because of the misfortunes of the Suzuki rider. We've got a 3-man battle beginning to break away already, and this is only lap number 1 here in Moto number 2. Down off Mount St. Helens, here comes Joe Byrd, your early leader from Union City, Tennessee. He took a 3rd in Moto number 1. Second place rider, your winner of Moto number 1, the 13 of John Natalie, but here comes the number 2 of Jeremiah Jones as they head into Little Talladega now. No changes as again they're beginning their breakaway. 1, 2, and 3. These riders could be the only 3 riders in the showdown to the checker flag in this 20-minute plus 1 lap moto. It is hard to believe that this is just the first lap of this intense race that we're about to witness, with Byrd out front, Natalie in second, Jones in third aboard the number 2, and then back there in the 4th place position, the number 12 of Keith Little, and check that out, the 55 of Digger Doug Gust just outside the top 5 as we near the completion of lap number 1 here in Moto number 2. Tough break for some of those Yamaha pilots like Pat Brown and Travis Spader, who found themselves dead in the water about midway through Moto number 1. They're trying to redeem themselves here in this second moto. We'll see if they're able to do it. We've got a battle for the lead now breaking down. It is the number 7 of Byrd being challenged by the number 13 of John Natalie, and all the while their favorite fan and spectator back there in 3rd place, the number 2 of Jeremiah Jones, is watching it all unfold. Again, look how rough the racetrack is here in this second moto of racing. We thought it was rough in Moto 1. It is that much rougher here in Moto number 2. Still not able to get around. Natalie is back in the number 2 spot, laying chase still to the number 7 of Joe Byrd as our jockeying for position continues. There comes the 199 of Pat Brown trying to work his way up through the pack right now. And look behind the number 13 of Natalie now. That looks like Jeremiah Jones is still well within the hunt, and he may be trying to sneak up to put a wheel in on both of these riders, the 13 and the 7, and maybe trying to make a double pass on these riders. We'll just have to wait and see. As they say, time tells all stories, and we've got a heck of a story to be told here as we are up that first uphill section. Again, it doesn't look that challenging on the TV screen, but let me tell you folks, this is some very steep terrain out here, and as we make this hard left-hand turn and make the flight to the top of the hill, this is about a 500-foot run of about 300 feet of elevation change. It's about 300 feet straight to the top of that hill, and only about 500 feet of actual track surface to get it done, and a lot of horsepower soaked out of those machines. There's Matt White, the number 32, who did so well in the qualifying races on Saturday, but struggling, it appears, here in the second moto of the pro race on Sunday. He did quite well, it looked like, in Moto number 1, but this is going to take him way back. Look at this. Looks like the 13 did make the pass. He did it so subtly that you hardly didn't even notice him get around the number 7 of Joe Byrd at the bottom of that hill. Now it is all John Natalie, and again, the questions, will anybody be able to dethrone this man as he is beginning to open up a little bit of a lead? And we see that battle from first place transition now into the battle for second, now between Joe Byrd and Jeremiah Jones. Jones just trying to stake some sort of a claim after that horrible first moto where he finished 14th place position after being punted at the top of the first uphill section in Moto number 1 on lap number 1. But here in Moto number 2, lap number 2, he is on the gas and challenging Byrd for the second place position. If nothing else, a ride for pride for that Suzuki pilot. Jeremiah Jones back in 3rd, trying to chase down the number 13 of Natalie, but first he's got to get through that number 7 of Joe Byrd. The battling continuing behind them now. And it looks like another Suzuki just outside the top 5. Let's take a look at that Parts Unlimited leaderboard. It is Natalie after 2 laps, Byrd in 2nd, Jeremiah Jones in 3rd, Keith Little in 4th, and Joe Havistow in 5th. But right on the rear wheels of Joe Havistow is the 55 of Digger Doug Gust, trying to break into the top 5 and maybe reel in his racing compadre there, the number 2 of Jeremiah Jones, who's in a heated battle now for that number 2 spot here on lap number 3 of our race. Will he be able to get around Byrd as we see him going nearly wheel to wheel coming out of that turn up that first uphill section? And look how rough that section of the racetrack has gotten. Looks like a virtual whoop field going uphill. And look how tight this battle is for second and third. And believe it or not, they're not far off the pace right now of the number 13 of John Natalie. So if the number 2 of Jones can get around Byrd, he is still well within striking distance of John Natalie, Moto number 1 winner. That might not do so great for Jeremiah Jones's overall. He might not be able to take the overall win, but he will be able to take home the overall bragging rights for Moto number 2. As the battle for second wages on, coming down that big downhill section into Little Talladega. Joe Byrd still in second, Jeremiah Jones still in third, and watch Jones search for the lines now. He is looking for the lines, and look how rough that section of the racetrack is. Very big acceleration bumps coming out of Little Talladega as we are now in the low line section of this race course into the sand pit, if you will, a washout of this race course. Big boulders, almost boulder-sized rocks that protrude out of this section of this race course. You can't see them so much on the camera right now, but as that race wears on and as the track develops and gets rougher and rougher, there are more and more rocks that are dug up through that washout section of the race course. Now, as we near the completion of yet another lap, looks like Joe Byrd is going to be able to hold on to that number 2 spot. Meanwhile, Jeremiah Jones is going from side to side looking for a fast line. Here comes John Natalie, your leader, at the end of that third lap of racing. He is still the man to beat. There goes Byrd, there goes Jones, and the gap is beginning to open between third and fourth. Keith Little still back in fourth place. Havaso still in fifth, and check it out, Digger Doug Gust is right on the rear wheel of both of those guys. Havaso has definitely got his hands full to try to fend off the former champion, Doug Gust. John Natalie now, your current champion, out front and has no one to fend off at this point as Byrd and Jones go at it for the number 2 spot. That is giving Natalie all the breathing room he is looking for in this second moto of racing, and it looks like he may be on his way home to a second moto win and setting the standard quite possibly for this 06 season, and that could spell disaster for a lot of riders out there. But again, you got to remember, this is the first race of the season. Jeremiah Jones had a horrible first moto after being punted at the top of that first uphill section and falling all the way back to 19th place position, trying to fire it back up and move all the way up into a 14th place position before it was all said and done. Jones, a man to definitely be credited with the possibility of being able to dethrone that number 13 of John Natalie. Right now, though, he has got to get around the experience of Joe Byrd heading up Mount St. Helens now. Look at the horsepower. You can see that they all three seem to be evenly matched. No riders gaining any ground there. No riders losing any ground on that section of the race course. Again, a huge long run to the top of that mountain. Here's your leader once more, John Natalie, and that lead back into the second place position, not very big. So if Natalie was to have any sort of a problem, miscue on the racetrack or a mechanical problem, either one of these riders, Byrd or Jones, could capitalize on it. But chances are the champion is not going to suffer from any mechanical failures, as this machine seems to be dialed in perfectly for today's racing action. And look at this. Jones has made the pass on the number 7 of Joe Byrd. And now looks like Byrd is trying to strike back, trying to come from the inside, not able to come back into it. So Jones has moved into the number 2 spot. Joe Byrd back in third. Let's see if Byrd has anything for him now as we head through these S-turn sections and now into the whoop section. Here comes Jeremiah Jones. He looks like he's trying to close the gap on the number 13 of John Natalie as we go big air through this race course. Doug Gust running back in 4th place now as he moves up from 6th place. Keith Little in the 5th place spot, and Joe Havasto back in 6th spot. So it looks like that Jeremiah Jones and Doug Gust are moving up. And what's going on here with Jeremiah Jones? Jones is pulling off to the side of the racetrack, and it looks like a broken rear shock quite possibly as he made his way into that whoop section. Could have bent something, could have broke something, whatever it was. It is not good news for the number 2 Suzuki racer of Jeremiah Jones. Now moving up to a 3rd place position, Digger Doug Gust aboard the number 55. And looks like Gust is going to have a good second moto now at the expense of his teammate Jeremiah Jones. Meanwhile, big sigh of relief for that rider right there, the number 13 of John Natalie. Those stories could have been true. It could be the year of Jeremiah Jones, but we're not going to find out here today at Glen Helen Raceway because Jones is out of the race and John Natalie, the Ironman, is beginning to open up an even bigger lead now since Jeremiah Jeremiah Jones had the mechanical problems out there. So we will not tell the true story until at least round number 2 between Jeremiah Jones and John Natalie as to who is the faster rider. Right now, it is John Natalie as he is proving himself consistently moto to moto, no mechanical breakdowns, and a flawless ride here at Glen Helen Raceway. Lap number 5, about the halfway point of this second moto of racing, and Natalie looks like he is on his way to quite possibly setting a record for himself, possibly on his way to a second championship season. And you know, looking at this racetrack, we pointed out the fact that it's gotten rougher and rougher over the course of both of these motos. Look at the consistency of this soil. It's a very sandy soil out here in Southern California, at least here at Glen Helen Raceway. And we've seen these berms go from about 6 inches to about 6 feet, believe it or not. Let's check in with that leaderboard now and see how things are breaking down at the halfway point. John Natalie, Joe Byrd, Doug Gust up to 3rd, Keith Little in 4th, and Joe Havistow, who finished 9th in moto number 1, rounds out your top 5 now. Just a few more laps to go. We are in the home stretch, and the number 7 of Joe Byrd is trying to reel in John Natalie, but more importantly, trying to fend off the advancements of the 55 of Doug Gust, as well as the number 12 of Keith Little, and that 5th place ride, Joe Havistow, aboard the number 75. Look at the three-way battle right now going on for 3rd place. Looks like quite possibly that Gust has his hands full, as John Natalie could have had his hands full with Jeremiah Jones, but that's not the case now. Joe Byrd still running back in 2nd place. Looks like that Natalie beginning to stretch it out, not as much as what some may have thought he would be able to do at this point in the moto. Back up and down Mount St. Helens, and again, very rough conditions, very high berms, creating very rough riding and racing conditions out there, making it tough for any rider to hang on to it. You better hope that your suspension is working top-notch today, folks, because you're using every centimeter that it has to afford you out there on a racetrack like you've got out here today. And that's one thing that these riders are very in tune to, is the way their suspensions are set up out there. And you can see that it has to be smooth. You can't be bucked around a whole lot, or it could cost you the race. Doug Gust back in 3rd, and his teammate Jeremiah Jones starting the season with high expectations, and Susie Meister had a chance to talk with him.
I've really been doing my homework. I got a newborn son this winter, and basically after he was born, I've really been pushing it hard to try to come out and put a good show on for the fans and for Suzuki and everybody, all my sponsors. So really been pushing it hard. So really want to win the championship. It's been a couple years now since I won the championship. So really pushing for it for 2006.
Well, pushing it here in the first race of 2006, not working out too well for Jeremiah Jones, but don't count him out just yet. That's just one of those fluke things that happen to a rider, especially of his caliber. And what's really neat is riders of his caliber are usually able to bounce back. Speaking of bouncing back, this rider right here bouncing back after the winter of all the skeptics saying that John Natalie would not be able to pull it off 2 years in a row. Well, he may be quieting the naysayers just a little bit here in this second moto of racing. Now, the first moto, you can say maybe it was just luck, but the second moto, consistency is starting to shine through early on in this 2006 season. Another rider starting to show some great consistency early on, the number 7 of Joe Byrd. He wrapped up the 2005 season with the win, and he's opening up what looks like to be with a possible overall second here at the opening round of the 06 season at Glen Helen Raceway. But he's got to get around that number 13 of John Natalie and put some distance, like maybe a couple of positions between himself and Natalie, in order for Joe Byrd to be able to take the opening win. And that's going to be tough to do, especially when the Ironman is out front and out front this far ahead of the rest of the field. So barring no physical problems or no mechanical problems, or even mental mistakes on the part of the number 13 of John Natalie, he should be able to walk away with a 1-1 to open up the 06 season, and we keep an eye on it. What was that? Look at that. Looks like the number 13 seat of John Natalie, his seat is beginning to bounce off. You can see him messing with it right there. What is going on? And not only is it falling off, it has fallen off, folks. John Natalie has lost his seat with the lead here in the second moto. Is that going to create a problem for him? Let's take a look at that one more time in our ITP replays. You can see it's getting real loose, gotten real loose at this point, and just simply falls off. Will it affect the champ in any way, shape, or form?